In this video, we're going to start to take a look at some different types of data. Right? And so when we take a look at data, we have two major things that we might look at. So one thing that we might look at is and be interested in is a parameter. This is what we are typically really most interested in. So a parameter is a numerical measurement describing a characteristic of a population. But we also might be interested in or get a statistic, which is a numerical measurement describing a characteristic of a sample. Now remember, a sample is a subset of a population. You have some alliteration that's going on here. Parameter is describing a population. You have a statistic describing a sample. Right? So we have that happening here. When we think about this, we talked about this in one of our previous videos, but what we really start off with is this population. And what we would like to do is we would like to get a parameter. We want to get a number, a value, something that describes the entire population. So if we were going to collect information from the entire population, we would do that by way of a census. But the thing about a census is those can be really expensive. They can be really difficult to do. There's a reason why the U.S. only does a census once every 5 to 10 years. It's because of the cost and the difficulty associated with doing that. Even when we do a census, we don't actually get information from the entire population. We get information from a large portion of the population, but we still miss out on part of the population. Right? You have the homeless population. They tend to be a little bit underestimated in or underrepresented in the census because it's difficult to get information from the entire homeless population because of the transient nature of their situation, right? And so we don't often get a census. And so instead of a census, from the population, we will collect a sample. So we collect this sample. After we have collected that sample, we will calculate a statistic. And then after we have calculated that statistic, we can then infer a parameter. And so the structure of our class, of this set of videos, is going to be we will spend some time talking about how do we collect a sample. So how do we go about getting that sample? Then after we've talked some about that, we'll talk about how do we calculate some of these statistics. And then towards the end, we will say, how do we use these statistics? So these statistics are just describing the sample, but how do we use these statistics that are describing the sample to say something about the population, to infer the parameter that describes the population? Right? And so that's going to be the structure of this set of videos. All right. So we have a statistic and a parameter that we might be interested in. Those statistics and parameters where we're collecting data, we have some different types of data that we might collect in order to try to eventually come up with statistics or parameters. And so we have two different types of data that we will talk about. So the first type of data that we will talk about is quantitative. or numerical. Quantitative or numerical data, this is data that consists of numbers. Right? So it consists of numbers, and those numbers are going to have to represent a count or a measurement. Right? So the number of kids that someone has, right? Or the height of a person. Anything that is a number that is going to represent a count or a measurement, when we collect that, that would be quantitative, thinking about the quantity, the amount. That's quantitative data, it's numerical. The other type of data that we look at is qualitative. Qualitative is also called categorical. Here you have data consists of categories or labels that are not numbers that are representing counts or measurements. Now, be careful with that sentence there, because it doesn't end at they are not numbers, but it is that they are not numbers representing counts or measurements. Right, so qualitative measures that you might have would be eye color. Right, so you might separate something based on eye color, or collect information based on eye color. But you could also look at something like a zip code. Right? A zip code, this is a number, but that number is not representing a count or a measurement. So just because it's a number does not necessarily mean that it's quantitative. You can have numbers that are not representing quantitative data. They could be representing qualitative data, and a zip code would be an example of that. So those are some types of data that we might take a look at. In the next video, we'll take a look at quantitative data a little bit more and look at two specific types of quantitative data. All right, we'll talk to you next time.